just as a starting point, can you just tell us your full name and a little bit about your practice?
Sure. I'm Katrice Matthews.
I'm Adella Deacon.
And we're the owners and partners of Sable Law Group, LLC here in Chicago. We're a firm that focuses on transactional and litigation work serving consumers, small businesses, and we practice in real estate, estate planning, contract disputes, business entity formation. What else?
That's predominantly our practice areas. As Katrice likes to say, we're small but mighty.
Yeah, I like that.
And we try to give a personal touch each time we take on a new client.
Awesome, fantastic. And did either of you work at, what was your previous work history before forming the firm together? Did you work at big firms? Were you on your own? How did that come together?
I started my own firm straight out of high school, out of law school.
That would be impressive.
Right? I know, right? So straight out of law school, I've always been a solo practice attorney. And then Katrice and I, we went to law school together. We were on a mock trial team together. And so we spent a lot of time together, and kept in touch after law school. And we started this firm almost 5 years ago now. Mm-hmm. But she had a little different trajectory.
I did.
Yeah.
So when I graduated law school, I first started as an associate or assistant attorney general under the state's attorney general here, Lisa Madigan at the time. And I stayed there for about 2 years. And then I started my own practice. And that was always the ultimate goal, was to have my own practice. So I admired exactly what Adella was doing. I was just trying to figure out how to get there. Mm-hmm. And then once I got there on my own, I still felt a little overwhelmed. So then I transitioned back and I went to a large law firm. And I was there for a very brief stint. And that confirmed for me that solo, small practice was the way for me. So then I partnered with Adella, and as she said, we've been together going on 5 years now.
Wow. Good for both of you for forming the intention to do that and getting together. That's great. I know a lot of people who will, they start out in a certain place and it's really hard to sort of, detach yourself from what it's like to work at a big firm or other places. So good for both of you for doing that. That's fantastic. So with it being the Young Lawyer Section's 50th anniversary, what just general advice would you have given to your newer attorney self, right? Something that you might have done a little bit differently, a piece of wisdom, a mindset that you would have adopted, or something that might be helpful to attorneys who are a little bit earlier on in their career?
I'd say to really try lots of different practice areas. A lot of times when you're, we've been conditioned to be in school, like, what's your major, what's your focus, what's your practice area, before you even really know what's available to you. And for me, for instance, real estate has become a primary area of practice for me. And it's something I never really was taught much about in law school, other than the basic property class that we all took. And were it not for my exposure to different legal aid agencies where the need came up, I wouldn't have been exposed to that. And I wish I would tell a lot of younger attorneys to just broaden your horizon as to what you think you want to practice in, and it might bring you back to what you initially thought, or it might take you to another area that you never even thought of exploring.
Yeah.
I totally agree with Katrice. I would also say that to preserve your network. So, some people get out of law school, never talk to any of those people again, and they go off here and there. But Katrice and I kept in contact over the years, and we would meet up and say, hey, what are you doing? And this and that. And another friend of ours, we keep in contact. But sometimes when we have issues that the two of our heads can't figure out, we'll contact her or reach out to other people. But preserve your network. And then as small firm owners, the amount of people that we know that refer to us is also valuable. So, make sure you keep in contact with people, but also not just on a surface level, but, what can you contribute to them as well?
Yeah. I know for small firms, solos, having a strong network to sort of recreate some of the resources and the advice and the insight and the relationships that you would naturally come and, have at a mid-size or a large firm is such an important piece of that puzzle. Like you really rely on your network for, you know, those like, hey, I have a question about this. What do you think about this?
Seen this before?
Right.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Which you know, working at a big firm, and Katrice, you probably were exposed to this a little bit. You know, it's really nice to be able to walk down the hall and say, hey, you know, senior person who's been doing this for 20 years, like, do you have 30 seconds, you know, that I can ask you this question? And so not having that as a solo small can be a challenge. It's probably one of the benefits of working in a space where there are, like Carr, where there are, you know, people who potentially you can add to your network, or even potentially attorneys who you might, you know, build some relationships with. I don't know if you've experienced that at all, but I would imagine that's one of the benefits of working at a workspace like that.
Yeah, there's several attorneys on this floor, and we're friendly with
them,
definitely.
Yeah. Okay. Is there anything about how you approach your workday, or just even how you run your practice right now, that might be helpful for newer attorneys who are just getting started? Something that you've learned about how to structure your day, or I don't know, anything about your day-to-day work that you think would be helpful for someone who might be just getting started or who's in their first few years?
I would say utilize your technology. In law school, you know, they teach you the old methods and, you know, the expensive methods. I mean, if you're at a large firm, they have the money for that. But if you're a new attorney and you're starting out at a smaller firm, or you're starting your own firm, you don't have those resources. So I don't know what they're teaching in law school now as to, you know, how to kind of substitute for some of those established methods. But, you know, you do it by trial, you learn, you ask people, and then, you know, if you want research, use Google Scholar. You know, if you want a lot of those things, there are other ways to do it. And, you know, all these apps now for, you know, time management and things like that. So there's different ways you can do it. So I would say embrace technology and kind of know what's out there to kind of supplement what you're doing.
Yes.
I totally agree. And I think the quarantine orders that came along with the pandemic really emphasized that need of folks being able to be a little more scrappy, dare I say, you know, and you know, when you rely on the formality of the structures that law school has put in place, or if you come from a large law firm, when those things are taken away from you, you don't know how to still conduct your business without them. You're going to be in a really tight place. The only thing I'd add is that good advice that was given to me early on was know which clients you don't want to take.
Yes.
Or which matters you don't want to deal with, because those often are the ones that will take up more of your time. One, because your heart isn't in it, you don't want to deal with it. And two, maybe because you know, those folks are just a little bit more needy, and so sometimes using your time to deal with clients that you don't want to deal with for whatever reason, if you don't turn that off, you're losing the time that could be devoted to a client who you would really want to preserve and work with.
And you get burned out.
Totally.
Yeah.
So knowing that early is great.
Yeah, that's great advice. I think for any business owner, just this idea of like really being laser focused on who your ideal client is, and making sure, because you can't show up at your best for the people that you're working with, for your clients, it's like the 80-20 rule basically, right? Where you're spending like 80% of your time on 20% of your clients, right? And so it's very easy to get sucked into, oh, well, it's new business, and so like we'll take it, but the return on that can be pretty low.
No.
Yes.
People get very mad.
Yeah.
Why would you take my case? No.
Yeah. Well, it wouldn't be good for you, and it wouldn't be good for me, right? That's great advice. I really like that.
But I would say too, that's the other benefit of being on the floor, like with Carr, with other attorneys, because then you can refer. You know, there's nothing wrong with just saying, hey, listen, we can't take you on, but I know someone who's willing to, and hey, they're just around the corner, or they're, you know, on another floor. So having that network, like Adella mentioned, and even just the physical closeness helps to facilitate that as well.
Yeah, referring someone out to someone who's a good fit, and having, again, being able to build a network with other people. Referrals are for small, you guys know this, for small and solos, fantastic. It's like one of your lifelines for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So on the thread of Carr, how has having your own dedicated workspace added to your practice, right? So for some small firms or solos, they choose to work from home, or they may not invest in a dedicated workspace, or some of the administrative assistance that comes along with that. So how has being part of Carr, or being part of that community, influenced your business, or how your business runs day to day?
I think it's really helped to reflect the image that we want our customers and our partners to have. Just having a prominent place too. Our Carr location here in Chicago is in a really beautiful building. It's centrally located in the Loop. It's easy to access for most of our partners that we're doing business with. And there's always someone here. So what's nice is, even if we're not here, reception can receive drop-offs from clients during business hours, or if we need to have a meeting with someone, having the variety of rooms to meet in is really helpful. And the aesthetic is important, because I think that small businesses do get a poor rap for not being as nice, not being as accommodating. And Carr basically allows us to provide those services, provide that image to our clients at a fraction of the cost.
Yeah.
And they're really accommodating. The staff is very professional and very accommodating, because with small business, sometimes things shift very quickly.
Yeah.
So we call them up. We're like, hey, can you do this? Never haven't received a no. So it's very accommodating.
Yep, totally. Especially, again, with quarantine and all this stuff. I mean, there's been so many changes.
Yes.
That we've been trying to navigate and figure out how to adjust, and the team has been really right there with us.
Awesome.
Thinking through strategies. So, yeah.
Awesome. Fantastic. That's great to hear. I think being able to have that support, and in addition to that, create some separation between home, personal time and work time, just sort of having a dedicated place where you can really be focused and go deep, as opposed to having work and home blend, can be a really challenging thing to do, especially if you're running your own business, because it's hard to turn it off day to day. Yeah. Great. My last question is for Katrice. Since you have been at a big firm before, what advice would you have for someone who would be making the transition from a larger firm or some other type of work to going out on their own? What are some things that they should be thinking about if they wanted to make that transition?
I would say to observe and learn the processes of what it takes to run a law firm. And that can really come from an experience at a larger law firm, because you see how the firm itself is managed from beginning to end with a case, how you manage staff. And for me, my time both at the large law firm and at government, I shadowed paralegals. I wanted to know some of the things that they don't teach lawyers, because they say, oh, someone else will do that for you. But when you're solo, you need to know how to do everything.
Right.
And so it's important to really have your processes in place, because if you have a system in place, then you can really kind of create a cyclical setup for your business, and it can almost run on autopilot with most things. And I think observing a large law firm is really helpful, because it's tried and true. They've been around, a lot of them, for a long, long time. And I would take that as my biggest takeaway for me personally.
Yeah, and running your own law firm, I think it's sometimes it's helpful for lawyers to really be clear on the fact that it's different. Being a lawyer is one thing, but running a business is a completely different skill set, right? You might be a great lawyer, but there's a whole bunch of other things that you have to think about, back office support, technology that that you were talking about before. What platforms am I going to use? Marketing, right? All of those things, which again, there's so many resources out there help you with that, but it really is it's a something that's different from just being a great lawyer.
Right.
So really being able to focus on that is helpful. Yeah. Great. Any final words of advice for newer attorneys?
I think I may have said this, but I would say focus on a particular area. You know, although you want to be open to trying new things, starting off, I think one of the challenges that I experienced was trying to be a generalist at first. And you can't be everything to everybody. So as you are, you know, maybe taking some CLE courses to see if you're interested in this area or see if you're interested in that, what you hold out to the public as what you do, try to narrow that down, because I think you will fare better in being known as the go-to person for this, or the go-to person for that, as opposed to just everything. Because and you'll get burnt out, like Adella mentioned earlier, and I think we both experienced that in different times in our practice. And so to the extent that you can narrow in, you can preserve your health, your sanity, and you might even be able to have a better marketing strategy with the niche practice. Yeah,
and it'll make your life easier too. If you know the ins and outs of this area of law, you know, that's easier to go to another one versus trying to struggle to know the ins and outs of all these areas of law. So I agree with Katrice wholeheartedly on that.
I think there is an instinct to sort of make yourself available to everyone because you think that will expose you to more business, but it's the opposite. Right. It's usually the opposite, right? The more people remember you for that one or two things that you do, then you're top of mind for them. And then you get a certain kind of client that you know how to help, and you're much more efficient because you've done it before. And so it's a much, from a business perspective, like that niche specialty really, and being able to advertise and market it that way, I think just spot on. I think it's a lot more helpful.